In the previous episode, I explained the history of Aryan theory, how it became the Aryan invasion theory, and why it evolved into the Aryan migration theory. In this video, I will describe the arguments put forward by the proponents of the out of India theory. I will explain which part makes sense and which part doesn't. In the third episode, I shall summarize what I feel is the highest probability of this migration based on the current data on genetics, archaeology, linguistics, and anthropology. So the Aryan invasion theory became obsolete and was replaced by the Aryan migration theory, as much of its arguments of an invasion didn't stand the test of time. These very arguments are used by proponents of the out of India theory when they attack the Aryan migration theory. They blend the Aryan migration theory with Aryan invasion theory and attack the invasion theory to make their point. However, there are other arguments posed by the out of India theorists which deserve a discussion. But first, let's understand what the out of India theory suggests. They suggest the Sanskrit-speaking Aryans are indigenous to India. These Aryans were the makers of Indus Valley civilization, and some of them migrated outwards, which then became the speakers of other Indo-European languages. The whole undertone of this argument is an Indo-centric narrative that India civilized the world, much like the Aryan invasion theory proponents once suggested the same for Europe. To make their point, apart from refuting the outdated Aryan invasion theory, they also make some interesting arguments. The Indus Valley civilization has a material culture which survives in modern Hinduism, like ritual bathing, the importance of rivers, the usage of bangles, the idea of yoga, sacred fire pits, amongst others. This is a valid argument. In the Indus Valley civilization, many swastika seals have been found which are considered as an Aryan symbol. It is a good argument even with its flaws. Then comes the mention of the Saraswati river in the Vedic text and the Mahabharata. In the early Vedic literature, the river is mighty and heavy. By the time of later Vedic literature, the river becomes calm, and by the time of Mahabharata, instead of meeting the ocean, it dries up in a desert. This description fits the Ghaggar-Hakra river, which had dried up before the assumed arrival of the Aryans in India. If Aryans came later, how come they knew so much about this river? However, critics of the out of India theory and supporters of Aryan migration theory suggest that the Saraswati river was actually the Helmand River of Afghanistan, which was mentioned as Haravatis in Avesta. A counter-response to this argument is that in the Nadi Stuti Sukta, rivers are mentioned in order from east to west, and Ghaggar-Hakra fits in the geography of Saraswati River. Helmand does not. Another argument is that the Ghaggar-Hakra river was considered to be Saraswati even in the records of Raja Todarmal, Akbar's finance minister. This makes some valid points to the argument of the Aryans being in India before the prescribed time of the migration theory. Then they use the genetic data. According to the Rakhigari DNA, we know that the people of the Indus Valley civilization were the ancestors of modern Indians. There has also been a movement outwards towards Bactria. An Indus Valley civilization trading colony have been found in Surkogai in Afghanistan. They use this data to show the nativity of Vedic people and migration outwards. They also use the Battle of 10 Kings and the story of Yayati's son to make the same argument. Also, the Mitanni Aryans migrating to modern Syria and Iranian settlements of Parsa, Madhya, Parthia, Bactria, Sogdia are added to this argument. So far sounds great, right? But here are some rebuts. There is no doubt that Indian civilization has been a continuous civilization since the Indus Valley civilization, and many ideas and material culture are in continuation even today. The story of the Saraswati River could have survived and continued to the next generations even after the namesake Aryan migrated. Like Akkadian-speaking people migrated to Mesopotamia and adopted the Sumerian culture and religion, but switched the language from Sumerian to Akkadian. It is also possible that the same religious culture continued in India with the shift in the language to Sanskrit. The Rakhigadi DNA is taken from a woman, and it proves that the mitochondrial DNA, which is passed on from mothers to daughters and sons, is still present in most Indians. However, the Aryan gene is a patrilineal Y chromosome DNA, which cannot be found in a female specimen. Autosomal DNA is carried from both parents, but the autosomal DNA in the Rakhigadi specimen does not have any Central Asian markers that modern Indians have. Indian climatic condition makes it difficult to extract DNA from other skeletons of the Harappan period. Therefore, this one specimen neither proves nor disproves anything. Literary sources like the Battle of 10 Kings and the story of Yayatis's children do not have a clear indication of migration outside the Indian subcontinent. Such interpretation is not backed by DNA studies or archaeology to corroborate. One more point they use to prove outward Aryan migration is the dispersal of the Y chromosome DNA of the F haplogroup. It is true that the F haplogroup originated in India and spread across the world, but that was around 45,000 years ago, which is 43,000 BCE. Human society then was in Stone Age, Paleolithic to be precise, and there has been no evidence of a civilization in that period. Some even use astronomy to date mythological events through celestial description, and their dating goes way back to when there was no civilization. These astronomical descriptions could be more allegorical than literal, and even if they are considered to be literal, they could have been retrofitted in the story using calculations. Let me explain. When Titanic was released, it had an important scene of the night sky. When astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson told James Cameron that the positioning of the stars in the scene wasn't correct with the period of the film, he retrofitted the correct star positioning in the scene in its 3D release 15 years later. Similarly, our advanced ancient astronomers could have retrofitted the celestial descriptions based on their belief of the period. To summarize, the problem with the out of India theory is that it lacks corroborative evidence that brings linguistic development, archaeological findings, genetic data, and astronomical data on the same page. It tries to have an Indo-centric approach quite similar to the Eurocentric approach discussed in the previous episode. Also, it makes me think about why don't we have mythological stories taking place in important Indus Valley sites like Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. While Aryan migration theory has its flaws, it still gives an approximate idea through corroborative evidence between multiple sciences. More on that in the next episode. Subscribe and stay tuned to Pravyav Now on content on history, mythology, and fiction.